It was announced today that Deshaun Watson will serve a 6-game suspension after he has settled with all but one of the women who claimed sexual misconduct by the droves. And it leads me to conclude that the NFL punishment system is absolutely and unequivocally broken. And the crazy part is, either way you look at this, the suspension makes no sense at 6 games. On one hand, Calvin Ridley got a full-year suspension for betting on his own team to win, and DeAndre Hopkins got the same suspension as Watson for a trace amount of performance-enhancing substance found in his system. Now, Sue Robinson, the retired judge who's kind of in the middle of all this, called Watson's conduct the most egregious ever reviewed by the NFL. Now, as I said, Deshaun Watson did settle outside of court, and I get there are no charges as of yet, but you decided to suspend him anyway. So there has to be something that is lost in translation here. Because if you are going to suspend him, then release what you found. Because if there is actually nothing and you suspended him, that's probably even worse. But for a league that continues to portray itself as the champions of morality and rights, how can they continually get this so wrong? They were going to suspend Ray Rice 2 games for having a UFC fight against a woman in an elevator until the video leaked. And we have multiple instances of the NFL claiming to stand for something, but not backing it up when it comes down to brass tacks. Now, Roger Goodell has a chance to appeal this, but I'd be surprised if he does. And anybody that blames the NFLPA shouldn't, because that's like blaming a defense attorney for doing their job. So from now on, I don't want to hear a damn word from the NFL about morality or rights of women or any of the other BS propaganda that they truly don't practice. Because again, they show you they are the best example of do as I say, not as I do. If you can explain to me, David Cohn, my co-host, and Daniel Day-Lewis from There Will Be Blood, if you can explain to me how if this was the most egregious thing the NFL's ever reviewed, and you watched Ray Rice beat a chick to sleep, basically, and drag her out of an elevator, and you give Deshaun Watson 6 games, they gave Josh Gordon, they basically kicked him out of the league for smoking weed. Like, at some point, the NFL, and they'll have all their commercials about, oh, we treat everybody equal, and all this, and we're the champions of rights and morality. Yet when it comes down to it, they're not about it. It's a joke. It's a joke to me, David.
Hey, this is the old Michael Scott win-win-win as far as the NFL is concerned. I mean, think about it like this. You get a star player back on the field this season, right? There's no retaliation or ruffled feathers as it relates to the NFLPA. And Roger Goodell gets to white glove this situation and say, hey, I wanted a full year. I wanted a full season plus $8 million fine. Don't blame me. Blame the disciplinary officer who also at the same time happens to be a female. So if the NFL had a reputation for getting these rulings right, I would look at it and say, okay, well, I'm sure they did their due diligence. Maybe they know information we don't know. And, 6 games when he hasn't been convicted of anything and he's not even going to be tried criminally, okay. But because the NFL has gotten so many of these wrongs, I'm looking at it as like, don't expect principled rulings to come down from unprincipled people.
I think that's the best way to put it. Again, you said that he violated the conduct policy. Sue Robinson said it's the most, think about this, the most egregious thing the NFL has ever reviewed. So if the most egregious thing only gets you 6 games, what does murder get you? A year?
Well, I mean, you can almost ask Ray Lewis that. He killed a guy, basically, and got away with it. Well, allegedly.
Yeah. Throw that allegedly.
Yeah, I do. Well, you go back, this just doesn't make sense to me. And you go back, you mentioned Josh Gordon. Josh Gordon did have some other things going on, but he got suspended 25-plus games for weed. Martavius Bryant got suspended indefinitely for weed. Oh, receiver from Pittsburgh. Plaxico Burress got suspended 3 games for shooting himself. Vincent Jackson got suspended 3 games for driving without a license. And I go back to, if you're really going to comp this, there's only really one way you can. Ben Roethlisberger, all right, had 1 accuser, all right, in 1 night and got 6 games. Mm-hmm. Okay? And then you go back, this guy had over 60 different masseuses in 17 months. If you have to put in a contract clause that you can only use masseuses from the Browns, you probably should have got more than 6 games. That's like saying you can't be 200 feet close to a playground.
Yeah.
There's a problem here, and it's a joke because there's no consistency in this at all. And if this would have been different, if this would have been a different quarterback, I think this would have gone a lot differently, especially in the public.
If it was Baker Mayfield or Kirk Cousins or somebody looked a certain way, it'd have been a year. I would be willing to bet you everything it would have been a year. But again, the NFL picks and chooses who to punish. A lot of times not even based on evidence, based on the way that they look. But you know what? I wouldn't have as much a problem with it, David, if the NFL came out and said, you know what? We looked into all this, and there really wasn't a there. We think that 24, those women made it up and then piled on each other to get at Deshaun and all this. If they'd have said that and said, but then they'd had to say, well, we're not suspending them a game. Because you can't sit there and say, oh, well, they didn't criminally charge them or they settled, so we're just going to give them 6 games. There's obviously something there. I don't think Stu Robinson comes out and says that just to say it.
That's such a good point, because there's a way that this could have been handled where the ruling was he gets suspended for 0 games, but if it's done through the prism of leadership and Roger Goodell comes out and says, this is what we found, this is what we didn't find, this doesn't break the code of conduct, X, Y, and Z, similar to what Dana White probably would have come and done, stood at the podium and convinced us all that this is the right decision. And again, like I said, if you have the track record to go along with it, then I completely agree with your point. I feel like I have to bring up one more name while we're talking about this, though, and that's Patriots owner Robert Kraft.
Yeah.
I mean, he got in trouble for a very similar situation here. I mean, can you imagine if we had something where Robert Kraft can't own the Patriots for 6 games? How does that work out? But I mean, again, no punishment there. So I don't know.
It's just, again, there's just no consistency, and it drives me absolutely nuts. And again, and I'm going to ask Barrett about it off the top. But if the league didn't act as the most virtue signaling morality police, and that, we're behind all these causes, if they didn't just go out and do that, I wouldn't feel as much. But again, nothing angers me more than people saying, I'm on my high horse and we do this and we defend that and you're all racist and you're terrible people and you're a womanizer. But after we reviewed the most egregious thing we've ever seen in the NFL, you get 6 games. And if I'm the Browns, I wouldn't be mad at the Browns. And you cannot convince me that the Browns did not know this was going to happen. You don't give somebody a contract like that unless you knew this was going to happen. The NFLPA doesn't come out and say, you know what, regardless of the ruling, guys, we're going to go with it.
That's when you knew something was up. That's when you knew.
If it walks like a duck, if it talks like a duck, it's an Aflac commercial. All right, hey, if you like what you heard, go ahead and ring that bell. Turn those notifications on. We're bringing it every day daily from 2 to 3 Central, and we want you here. I can hear it ringing now.